tell if this is recording there. Stop it. Okay, now it's recording. Good morning. How are you? Welcome, all you sagebrush sketchers, senior citizens, and people with history, knowledge. Been around the block a bit. Let's see. My name is Spader, and as most of you know, because these videos are really just for people who take my classes, but just kind of a backup. Let's see. What shall we talk about today? Ah, as everybody knows, we don't do politics. We don't do religion on this channel, or nor in my classes, because it can be a little bit contentious these days. What you think? Everybody have their tea? I'll tell you about my cup here in a little while. Mm. All right, today let me get rid of my mug here, this one, and give you some of you of this one. What we're gonna do today. Oops, let's see if I can get that over there. How's that? Hopefully there's no reflection there. How's that? Yeah. This one, I think I could have gone a little darker with some of these shadows back in here a little bit. And but it's kind of cute. Also, the drawing that I'm going to show you, I think I leveled out some of this. I think the wood down here slants a little too forward. It could actually be that way, but I kind of wanted it to be a little flatter. You can draw it however you prefer to. I'm going to show you the one here. I've already drawn mine. I did it with pencil because I was playing this morning with dip pen. So I inked it in with a dip pen, but I did sketch most of it out with a pencil first. I didn't trust myself enough to do it just with a dip pen this morning, just because I haven't used them for several years in any length at any big amount. So I'm going to erase mine, but I will leave this up here if everybody wants to first get your paint out, put a little water in each one, not a lot, just a couple of drops, a drop here and a drop there, just so that your paint, now I've already put water in mine an hour ago or so, and it really helps if you can moisten your paint a little early. So make sure you've done that. Make sure you have your brushes handy. I think today, well, I'm just going to use these. I'll just use these. Today I'm just going to work with these Princeton Heritage Series brushes. So I have a few of them out here. And a fountain pen handy if I want to tighten up, put in a few more lines. All right. If you have your phone handy, get your phone handy, and I'll hold this up, and you can take a photograph and have it for later. Okay. And since this is not a live broadcast, I'm not broadcasting this live, I'll put it up on YouTube and you will be able to pause right there. Just come back to it or pause or rewind and pause it and draw it. So you can do that at your leisure. I'm going to go ahead and erase this one. So there, you may like that better. You want to try it without the pencil marks in it, take a picture with your cell phone. Or if you know how to take a screenshot on your computer, screenshot on your phone. A lot of people do that. Here's the picture again. You can screenshot it I'm going to add a couple of lines that I had left out. I'm going to put one here. Now remember, this line is a little further back than here because this wood overlaps for one thing, but you don't want this quite butted up against it. I'm going to do the same thing, here, and maybe I'll indicate that there's some grass or something in there. Okay, kind of like to have another bit of something here. All right, is everybody ready to get going? These wonderful little water pumps, to me, they're kind of like windmills. They're going by the wayside. Let me dampen. I'm going to dampen my brushes so that they're not stiff when I first go to use them. And uh, let's go ahead. Let's look at first doing a wash over the whole back here. Went ahead and I outlined all these little flowers because since we're not masking, it's very difficult to make these flowers pop or show up over another color. So what we want to do is outline them and avoid them with the background wash. My background wash, I'm going to make quite a bit of um, using mostly burnt sienna. I'll put in maybe some yellow ochre. That's quite a bit of yellow ochre. So we'll see how this goes along. I might change it back, put in a little bit more of the burnt sienna. But I'm putting in quite a bit of moisture. And I'm going to go around. Now you can see I left a little highlight right here. See the highlight? Mhm. When I come in here, I don't want to paint that. I'm just going to go around it. You could conceivably leave a highlight in a few other areas, you know, like that. You don't have to do it all over. But what I'm going to do with this wash is I'm going to put wet into wet, and I'm going to charge into this wash with some darker colors. So let's put a little bit more of that burnt sienna over here on the corner here, and I'll just put some of that in as I'm going along. Oops, I dipped into one of those flowers. Try to be careful of that. Don't do as I do, do as I say. Does your father always tell you that? That's what my dad, he told me that several times in my life. That's where I remember it from. Let's go ahead and put a little more in there. I might even put a little bit of the burnt umber down in here. Ooh, that looks pretty dark. I don't know that I want it that dark. So I may end up taking a little bit of that out of there. Take your time with this, but do remember that you're trying to keep wet edges. You're trying not to have direct, stark lines where colors hit each other, where things, for instance, see this edge right here? If I go back in here, oh, maybe it'll happen right there and I'll get a chance to show you. I'm varying the color. I'm going back into that yellow ochre mixture. I'm just varying the colors a little bit so that it's not just one color. Hope all of you are doing well. How'd everybody's week go? Nobody's commenting anything because these are not live. Now we're going to come back with a shadow over this. So we do just want to get some pigment in here that is a varied pigment to show movement in the wall. Now it's okay here because the paint didn't go past this line. But up here, if this dries too much, it can make a line there. Of course, this being an old adobe wall, it's really not important because we want a lot of texture in the wall. But in some instances, you have to be careful and try to keep a wet edge. You don't have to do this all the way up here. You can leave some like that, some white here and there if you want. You can dry brush it. We're just trying to put texture in here. Dry brushing is one of those techniques that work. Okay. Maybe a little darker material here. A little more water. More of that yellow ochre because that's getting a little too dark there. I'm just trying to create something with interest. This makes these little ones like this, they kind of make a nice, if you want to use them that way, they can make very pleasant all occasion cards, write a note to somebody. You can. One of my students in the live classes was asking about how to make cards. If you look, maybe even at Michael's, I found them at our local art stores where I buy them, but they sell these packages of note cards that are folded piece of watercolor with an envelope. And they usually, I think they have about 10 of them in there. I haven't looked lately to know for sure. But you can do individual hand painted note cards, that these little drawings are good for. Just putting a little movement in the wall there. Adobe walls, when they're old and uncared for, become have a lot of character in them. There you go. I'm going to let that dry just the way it is. You can put in less paint. You can do, for instance, you can do that old lost and found edge thing. You can come back in here and let's see, I have a piece of old t-shirt thing here. I'm going to use to jab some of that out just to give it some. Here, I'll leave a sharp edge there. Maybe I'll put a softer edge here. I've got just a little moisture on my brush, and that's what I'm using to soften those edges up. You don't have to do those things. They're just things to do that give it a little character. On the sky, I'm going to throw in just a little bit of ultramarine blue, and there is a little bit of teal in there. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to throw in a little bit here, but I'm also going to, as you can see, everybody knows that I paint with a pretty dirty palette. So I'm getting some of this other color, whatever was in there, that'll create a little bit of color variation. I'm not going to leave a cloud in there. I'm just going to make it so that it's not all a perfect sky. We've done clouds, a few clouds. Maybe we should have a class that's just on clouds in a way. I teach a class that's just on pine trees, evergreens, and a class that's just on deciduous trees. A couple of classes on perspective, aerial perspective, and um, and linear perspective. I don't really do a main one on clouds. Maybe I should develop one. I took a little much out there. I'm not sure I like that. I think the wife just got home. She was walking the dog. So you may hear some background noise there. Okay, while this is drying up, this is drying up, this is drying up. Let's go ahead and take, let's just use similar color here. You can use this yellow ochre and mix a little bit of burnt sienna in it if you like. I'm just going to put some ground here that is similar in color to the adobe wall. Well, actually, this wall, though it most likely is made of adobe, um, looks like it's stuccoed over because you don't see the adobe blocks. Down here, I think on this one I left some sharp edges, which I like. Down here, I'm going to do some lost edges. So I'm just going to dampen my brush, tap it off on my Carhartt here, or my scrap t-shirt, and soften up those edges in some places. Maybe I'll do the same thing here and soften that one. Okay? And let that start to dry. Oh, this cup, I don't know if you can see it there. Those are sled dogs. There's a sled over there. I got this cup, Sherry got me this cup. That was years back. Hmm. I got gifted a trip to Alaska. My brother and I went up there for his birthday party to learn how to dog sled. Heck, that was a lot of fun. Anyway, my wife bought me that cup to remember that time. I'm going to go back in here. I didn't do something that I kind of liked. I'm going to try and take just a little bit of this material out here. And lighten this up because the sun is coming this direction. I'm just going to take a little bit of that material out of there. I'm not really concerned about it because we're going to come back in with a shadow that goes this direction, fills this in. I just thought that maybe I'd gotten that a little dark. Okay. All right. This one's going to go fairly quickly. These water pumps have been around. It's, AI said, by the way, this one is from a Dali reference. I asked Dali and described a situation for it, and I have to say, Dali's coming along, but a lot of times it really cannot produce what you ask for. So the first several of these that Dolly made for me. You know, I kept trying to correct her, but she had turned the water pump, the mine has a female voice. You know, they're not gender, or they're general gender neutral. Um, turn the water pump so the handle would be hitting the wall. Even this one is close to that. You know, though there would have to be some more distance there for that handle to really work. Uh, that was one of the problems. They do things. Last night I was trying to get Dolly to create one. I use canteen cups a lot. I just enjoy them. I cook my lunches in a canteen cup, you know, when I go out to the park with my canteen cup and make a little something on the park bench or out into the llano, you know, out in the mesa or the woods, or this week, Sheridan, um, camping down at Elephant Butte Lake. And I did a little bit with my canteen cup. All right, things are getting dried up here. Let's go ahead and try to do this. No, I'm gonna wait on that one. So let's put some color down here. You see, we want to start with this very light color. See how light that is? The way I'm going to mix that is I'm just going to take some of this brown, a little bit of this blue, a little bit of that sky color I had there, and mix it in to make kind of a bluish gray. Looking for a bluish, maybe a touch of blue. That's too much. I prefer my grays to be on the blue side. This still is a little warm for my blood, my taste. And I've got way too much material. I want a much lighter wash than that. So I dip my brush in my water and kind of leave a little bit on it. I dry it out on the towel here, the Carhartt. You can see that I'm taking some out, but I'm kind of just put in a little bit of that material over the whole thing. I dipped it in the water again, got the material a little thinner, and still is kind of heavy for me. And you can see my ink didn't quite dry. I was using India ink with that dip pen, and apparently I should have left it to dry further. It's coming up there, lifting. So I'll just hit it a little bit with this and dry that up a little bit. Maybe I'll dry up a little bit there. India ink takes a little while to dry. Once it dries, it's very water resistant, though. While this is still a little damp, you can take some little bits of color. I'm using burnt sienna here. I'm going to put a little bit of color in this, little here, just little bits of color here and there. Maybe spread that out a little bit so that it's not all just plain gray. It's not all just a dead gray. Putting just a little bit. You can experiment with these things. You know, your first painting or the first time you try one of these, let's say not one of mine, but any painting that you try and you've never done one before, or even if you have, it's very beneficial to not try to make one perfect painting. Don't worry if it doesn't come out. Learn from it and make another. Don't expect every one that you do to be a winner. A lot of them are, shall we say, educational paintings. I'm going to use similar color here and do the bucket, not these stripes going around. Those are rusted metal, right? But I'm going to put some material in the bucket. And here again, I want to put some variation in this. I don't want it to just be a plain gray bucket. But I want it to have a little bit of variation, but a little bit. I'm going to use some blue in there, just a touch of blue here and there. You can use some teal if you have it. That might be cool, might be nice. I'm just going to dab in a little color here and there. And the reason is the main thing of this painting that makes it work is the juxtaposition of complementary colors. Blue is not necessarily a perfect color to be the complementary color of this, but it's close. There's kind of orangey colors in these browns, and a little bit of blue really helps contrast the colors. Hmm. Oh, see, it's lovely. Let's go ahead and put some pigment on this rusty old bucket as well. You can leave some white highlights here and there if you want to. Remember, you're in charge of your painting. You can do what you want. What I do here is trying to give you some ideas. I'm going to leave this part empty for now where you would be looking into the bucket. And I didn't do that part back there where the wall, for some reason. While this is wet, I will go ahead and dab in just slight amounts of, here's some yellow ochre. And maybe even just a teeny. Let's see how little there is on my brush there. I don't know if you can see that. Of cad yellow. And then here again, I love these Carhartts because I'm going to take a little bit out of that front so it's lighter, as though the sun were hitting that area. Trying to make these classes, I'm trying to go a little bit faster because these are pretty long for someone to watch because I think you can pause it whenever you want to. So since we're not doing a live one right now, okay, kind of mixing up the color here that's just a bunch of who knows what. It's got yellow ochre, it's got all of them in it, burnt sienna. And this is really going to be a kind of a tricky thing here. I'm putting this in here. It's a very similar color to that background right now, but I'm going to try to leave a little white on top ridge, and I'm wetting the bottom part there like that. And now I'm going to come in with just a tiny bit. Oh, that's too much, way too much teal. Going to try and hit it every once in a while with a little teal in there. Okay. And I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to dampen that a little bit because it is just really too intense. A little more water, take out a little more. Because right there, it's getting hit with sunlight, right? And then I'm going to come back with a lighter mixture of some of that wall color. And don't worry, we're going to make this separate from the wall, even though it's a similar color with shadow. Okay. I keep varying it. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of burnt sienna. Damp my brush. Move that around just a little bit because it was too heavy there. And put a little more burnt sienna in there. Mix it in a little bit. And experiment with this whole rust thing. It takes some practice, but basically to make rust, the three things, I'll leave that white just as an accent. In real life, it would not be. But I'm going to leave it that way just because I want your eye to go down there. You know, I want your eye to kind of go boom, 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 and stay on the subject here when this is finished. We're always trying to lead the viewer's eye. I'm going to mix some more of this teal color. I'm liking that. And start on the handle here. A little bit in there. And maybe a little bit down here. As though this thing were at one time painted blue. It certainly isn't now. Coming back in with some random wall color that I've made. Put a little more red in this one. Or not red, but you know, burnt sienna. Kind of going on the bottom of these and trying to leave a little bit of a white highlight there. The three colors of rust. Did I would say that already? I don't know if I get to paying attention to my painting and lose track of what I'm actually talking about. It's kind of funny because when I go out to the studio there, like on my oil paintings, I used to do what's called plein air paintings, and then I do small, 9 by 12 paintings in oil in my little studio. I call it my studio. It's a nice renovated shed with a little wood burning stove. But I would turn on the radio and be listening to the radio and mixing the paint and starting to stare at the reference and starting to think about what I'm going to do. And before I knew it, it was 3 hours later. The painting was finished, and I had no idea what was on the radio. That, that was it. Just kind of. I always thought it was kind of funny how you get in the zone. And so back to the three colors: yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and burnt umber are very good colors to make rust, if that's something you enjoy. Something. Speaking of which, let's work on these rusted things here, these metal strips around the barrel. You can, if you want to, put some blue in there. I might put just a dab of the blue over on this side here. Just little strips of it. See that, how it's starting to form that shadow back there? And I may take just, this is so light of a thing. You want to make this paint very thin, faint. I'm just going to start putting in a little bit of a shadow here and a little bit of a shadow there. Just start getting things kind of darkened up a little bit. I'm just basically using dirty ultramarine blue right now. Just on the tip of my brush. I'm just starting to turn this into three-dimensional, a three-dimensional object. Okay. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is move to a pretty fine little brush. This is a number 2 Princeton round. Hmm. These pumps have been around forever. They consist basically of a pump handle. There's a piston in here, and it goes down and then turns solid, pulls up an amount of water, shoots it out. Right. My question is, how many of you, or does anybody? I do. I remember having used one of these, although we did not have one of these in the yard. I do remember using them in a few places. But to me, they seem to be kind of, I'm putting little bits of shadow here and there to show that this is a three-dimensional item. The shadow is made up of a little bit of that burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And you don't have to make it straight. It can be kind of, I'm coming down with this pretty straight right now, but I will show you. You can come back in, damp your brush again, and then kind of fade it a little bit. It doesn't have to be a solid, dead solid line, you know. It's better if it has just a little movement to show that the texture on that pipe has rusted away and made some texture on it. It's not just perfect brand new stripe down there. And Sherry, thankfully, my wife just made some breakfast for me. And I foolishly told her I wanted it. And I appreciate her doing it, but I don't think right now is the time for me to eat it. Now, you could say that this fossil is making a bit of an angle shadow, but I'm not sure it would be there. It might be down here. So I think I'm going to leave it without one. This up here is a little bolt that sticks out. I haven't painted the bolt. I just left it white, but it would have a shadow here. Normally this thing has a nut and holds that on there. And I kind of did it on this one, but this painting, I think still that handle is a little too close to the wall. See how this, I tried to make this look a little bit three-dimensional there, like it was at an angle and I did the same thing down here where you see under the handle. I did not do that on this one that you're working on. Turned it completely sideways so that it doesn't look like the handle's going to hit the wall as much. Okay. I'm going to continually work on these things, putting a little more shadow here and there. Now, down at the bottom of things, there's usually what's called an occlusion shadow. Have you ever seen that? Right where, pay attention, right where your glass sits on the table, a lot of times there's an occlusion shadow. It's right where the table and the glass meet. So that's why I'm darkening these down here. A lot of times that gets pretty dark. And most of my shadow just consists of a little bit of ultramarine blue and either burnt umber or burnt sienna. I'm also going to darken in some of these where the wood is split. I'm going to darken some of this up so that it looks like wood, like old wood. I don't know if this works for you. I am going really fast on this one. Maybe a little bit of a shadow down here. A deeper shadow. We're going to go over this in a few minutes with some more shadow, but so as people watch this video, leave something in the comments and let me know if you remember using these. Like I say, they're kind of like the wooden windmills. How many wooden windmills do you see these days? These days, everybody, the ranches, I think, well, most of them have metal, for one thing, but then a lot of them also, I'm going to make this look like the barrel that it is. I'm putting just a few splits in there. Some of them, you only want one or two. Let's go down with this one. Let's go all the way with this one. You don't want to make them all go all the way. You want to provide interest. So let's do this one here. And that one can do a little bit there. And we'll come back. I'm going to do it with my fountain pen. I'm going to come back and um, put some of the lines in the wood here. But um, my brush is not fine enough, or at least I can't get it fine enough to just put that in there. This one's a tough one now. This next piece. I'll give you a minute to catch up there. Realize some. I think this is, what is this morning? Just regular old hmm, Kroger tea. I'm going to turn this whole thing into a shadow color right here. Put a little bit of burnt umber in there, a little bit more water. Quite a bit more water, touch of blue, I lived most of my life in either modern or semi-modern. This is kind of touchy. You want to definitely try not to hit those flowers. You want to go around those flowers again, but I'm darkening this up with a shadow color. When I first came to New Mexico, I was very young, like 10 years old, and we had had some unfortunate times and didn't have much money. We lived with my grandparents, my father and my siblings and my mother, and and my cousin would stay there as well. My uncle was a truck driver, and he would stay there when he was in town with my cousin. Anyway, they had a very large backyard and used to garden and that kind of thing. My grandparents were from a different time in history, right? They were both born in the 1800s. So there was a spigot in the backyard that just came straight out of the ground from a well. And my cousin and I dug a deep hole, which was a lot of fun. And one time while I was down in the hole, just to give me heck, I suppose, he turned and dug a trench up there. I was down in the hole filling the bucket that he would take the paint or the dirt out of the hole with on a rope. I would fill the bucket, dig some more, and he dug a trench and ran the water from the spigot over to the hole, so it was dripping down on me, and definitely left an impression on my mind. Sadly, he and I we got to be very close, as we became teenagers. But we only lived there for a short time. My father found gainful employment, and life goes on, and we got a nice house in a better part of town. Yada yada. Sadly, that cousin is no longer with us on this planet. He's been gone some years. He died young of cancer. Never smoked a day in his life. A little bit of shadow there. Think I need to make a little more shadow color. Whoa! That blue is intense. Be careful. Be careful. Danger, Will Robinson. Dove deep into that blue that is very damp. So a little more ultramarine blue, a little bit of burnt umber, and I have a little bit more water. I have a semi-dark shadow color, and I'm going to suggest that pump, the shadow is, I'm going to put mine here. I'm going to also break the shadow up as though the wall were not specifically or perfectly straight. Does that make sense? And from up here, let's see, I'll put this thing like it was there, leave those there, and maybe I'll try to put the handle out here. It's just an indication of a shadow. Doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. Obviously, I've hurried up, and I'll sit here for a few moments and give you folks a little opportunity to catch up. I said I was going to sit here, but I'm looking at this shadow. I want some shadow on this pot here. I think that this bucket has dried up enough that I can come in with some shadow on this side of it. Is everybody getting that? These are such fun little paintings. If you look, there's a few of them there. They're quick, they're fun. They can be colorful. I mean, you could paint this same scene as though the pump were new, make it bright red or make it, teal or something like that. You don't always have to do exactly what I do. So, oh, I didn't put a signature down here. I can hear my wife out there on taking care of some kind of issue. You know, everything is a bit of work these days to pay bills online or on the phone, or certainly if you have a problem. Very zero service these days, right? For those of us who lived in the last century, we're an adult in the last century. Service in this century has evaporated, completely evaporated. I suppose it'll never go back the other way. I'm just putting little bits of ink here and there. I think it will make it look a little bit more realistic or semi-realistic. That's still a little wet to work with there. Let me know in the comments if you see this video in the future, if you happen or bump up across it. Just send me a comment. Let me know if I'm going too fast. Kind of speeding up. I've been watching some of the younger videos. Those folks, some of those younger folks, man, they put out tons of information in a very short time, and then you can just go back and rewind. I don't know that we enjoy that as at our age. I find it kind of frustrating sometimes. Let me know what you think. Right in here where the crack is, a lot of times there's a slightly darker shadow than the rest of it. Shouldn't be a perfectly straight line. I put in quite a bit of water, so mine kind of melted out a little bit. You can feather it out with your brush, with a dry brush. We can also, another thing we can do is put a dot or two here and there to go with these bends that are in the bucket to suggest that the little bends or dents or whatever have, a shadow or creating a shadow there. Also, let me know if I'm speaking loudly enough. I have this volume set just a little bit loud, I think. We'll see. Da-da-da-dum. 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 Oh, yes. Well, this shadow, if it's on the wall, it should have this spigot, right? So we do want to just come in here with something that is going that way. Like I say, it doesn't have to exactly mirror the thing because your eye will make up the difference there. I'm going to put just a little bit another layer of shadow here, especially down on this one. A little darker back here. Remember that the contrast between colors, the blue against the brown, the contrast between values, the dark against the light, and the contrast between sharp edges and lost edges, loose edges. All three of those attract the eye. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people to look at things, even if it's not necessarily drawn perfectly or not necessarily, it can be very loose. It doesn't have to be hyper realistic, but we are trying to get people to look at it. That's our main objective. I'm going to take a little bit of this is I'm using sap green. Actually, I'm not. This is azo green, I believe. I'm first going to put just a light value here in the in this bucket, saying that everything in here is some kind of green. I'm going to put a light value of green. Try and not hit this white highlight on the front here. And let that kind of start to dry up. Meanwhile, while that's drying, when we do these flowers here, you can do yours in red, you can make them blue. I'm going to make these a little redder than the ones I have here close to pink, which is just all I did was a very thin red. So I'll show you what I just put a little red in here, but I want to be sure and leave a white highlight. I'll put a little red. Now, if you really wanted to, you could be very descriptive about these, make them look like poppies or something. I'm just suggesting that there are flowers here. They're nondescript. We don't know what kind of flowers these are. They're just flowers. So I put a little red in each one. Then I get just a touch of water on my brush and just kind of spread that out a little bit. I want these to come out a little redder though than the ones I did in that other, than the one I just showed you, the finished painting I just showed you. You always want to try and do this where a flower drips over or a leaf comes over the edge. Okay. Don't do this yet if you can if you can't control yourself. But if you can not put any green on those red spots, you can come back and start adding a few darker leaves here. You can put a couple of them over here in front. And then I'm going to put in a little cadmium yellow. This, or you can use lemon yellow, might even work a little better. Put in some very light leaves here. You want this paint to be close to opaque, very thick, very light colored, but and just barely green, so you can, not really very visible, but unless you're willing to mask everything. Or another way to do that is to come back with wash that is very opaque, and you can put some very bright leaves in there if you wanted to make this your subject. I kind of focused on making the water pump my focus. I like the water pump myself better than I like the having the flowers being the main focus. There is something else here that I did not do correctly, so I'm going to correct that right now. I will show you. This shadow came down and it goes clear over to here, so it not only is back here, but it should hit the bucket. And I didn't do that correctly on the first one, I think. There you go. And because I see how I came over here with shadow, there should probably be the same kind of thing right here. As you see, I have it kind of missing here. Should be a little bit of a hit right there. I'm just darkening up some of these areas. Remember, it's that value. The darker is what darker against lighter value difference. The juxtaposition, as it were, of the two against each other draws your eye more. Hmm. It's looking pretty close, I think. I can't see any major parts. are wrong. We can let this green dry up a little bit more. I'm taking this off and then I'm going to play with that green a little bit, but it's still pretty damp for me to be able to add some more leaves in there. This is, if I didn't mention this, this is an AI reference. I think I mentioned that. And I've found it very helpful because I have thousands. I probably have, just on my cell phone, I have 25,000 photographs. But, and of course, there were more years where I was shooting in film than there are since the cell phones and all that technology has come along. So I have a lot of reference photos. But when you get an idea and you want something, that GBT is a pretty nice one. It works pretty well. Like I say, it's still learning. It still makes mistakes. So you really have to watch what you say and not so much what you say, but you have to watch chat's response and make sure that it's not either chat GBT or Dolly. Make sure they're not lying to you because or putting out misinformation because they do occasionally make errors. It's getting better, but always double check your facts, you know. Be a critical thinker. Pay attention to what it's saying and see if you agree. Okay, I'm going to put in a little bit more of some of these lighter green colors down in here. And when that dries, let that dry. You could put a few of the stems in there, you know, that you want it to dry. You can put the stem either with your fountain pen, your pencil, or you can put it in a dark green color with your brush. So let's see how this is looking. It's getting there. Coming along. Coming along nicely. You can separate your pump more from the wall. See this one, how much this is darker. I'll put it over here and see if I can, let's see if I can move this where we can see both of them. Barely. See how this pump is darker than this pump? I think I will go back into this one and fix that shadow. It's missing right there. Put just a little bit of shadow on it right there. Still pretty damp. I'm going to leave my stems the way they are because I think they'll just bleed. Let's try one or two. See. You don't really want it to put them in there all the way, and you can leave some out. They don't have to go. You can leave some of it so that the eye just makes them up, so that the human mind makes them up. You can also put in some, another one that makes it, helps it work is to put in, I'm putting some ultramarine blue along with some green. Like I say, you can use azo green. Sap green is a little bluer. Putting in some darker leaves here. Now, in reality, there might be some light hitting these, so these would be really very light leaves, but you really can't see them that well. So, and there you go. I think I'm going to call that one good, folks. Appreciate y'all showing up. Leave a comment, suggestions, be polite. And in the future, as the year goes on, I'm going to start working again on the website and maybe try and get an area where we can communicate with each other, where you guys could talk to each other if you want to, in a safe area. I think another thing that I might do, you don't have to do this at all, but I might spend a little more time uh, after I eat that breakfast that she made me, darkening some of these cracks in here where um, where the wood meets. These are big, these are areas where there'd be some deep shadows. Maybe here there might be. You could darken one from this side, provide some more interest there. All right, let's see here. I know I went kind of quick on that one. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you can pause. Let me know if the pause and paint, or if you like these shorter videos a little bit better, or if you prefer the long ones. Stay safe, stay happy, keep sketching. All right. Try and look up urban sketchers in your area. Might be something fun for you to do. See you the next time.